Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It's Thursday, the 18th of January. So I thought this morning's conversation is going to be over toolbox etiquette. I know, but I think it needs to be said. I'm having a great time with this, and I'll tell you why. So hang tight. All right, so welcome back. So, what is toolbox etiquette? Well, I want to stress, you know, right from the get go about my feelings on, how you arrange your toolbox and your workstation that you're at. And if organized chaos works, it works, right? And the thing is like with yesterday's video, the toolbox challenge. I wanted to do something like that because we had the day before. I had told Claude, I said, look, I'm working on the stuff out here, and this is where I'm trying to do the videos because I have better light. I kind of need my toolbox closer because I'm constantly spending more time walking around, the bench right there in the main part where the computers are. I'm going around and in back of where I normally sit in front of my computer to get the tool, and back and forth and back and forth. And I don't know about you, but when you get older, that back and forth starts getting longer distance. But I told him, I said, what do you think? And he said, well, my best suggestion is let's roll that toolbox right out and put it right in between where our computers are, because he's in our long station there. He's got his own computer right there. He looks up parts and looks up. He'll even look up a YouTube video on somebody doing something if he isn't sure of just how it goes together and so forth. And if I'm really busy, a lot of times he'll look up the parts and find them. And then if he finds them all on eBay or on Amazon, he puts them into the shopping cart and then has me sign off, and I just order him whatever he needs. But it was right in the way. And the first thing we ran into, we had a couple guys, it's a different company out of Krogan, young guys, and they run a farm equipment business where they do a lot of repairs for the big dairies. And when I say big, 4,500 milking cows. And one of the workers' dads had ordered a starter switch and a starter solenoid from me. And he just had his son pick it up. But we were all joking about having that toolbox right in the way, trying to have a conversation, And so we were talking, the four of us, like, what the hell would you do with it, I'm trying to keep my foot traffic down. So we all said, what about that wall? And that's how the video started. It wasn't just Claude and I, our input. It was also these two young guys that's what they were doing. The one young man, he owned the company, his dad did, and the other one worked for him. But really nice young men. I mean, hardworking. It's good to see that. And they're both mechanics. And while they were there, he's like, can you get me this Kohler part? I need it. Said I bought an air compressor, an older one. It had this Kohler engine on it. And it got rolled out of the back of the truck and it broke the... See, we used to carry a lot of them for Briggs. Kohler you never had too much problems with. But it's that plastic piece that goes in between the carburetor and the actual engine on the intake side. But he had cracked that. And he said that he had looked and got a hold of somebody online, and they were 4 to 6 weeks out. So I told him, I said, give him one of our business cards that has my email address on it. I said, give me a picture of the actual Kohler model. And he had the serial number, but you really need the model number. What is it? Because it was like a 5 or a 6 horse, so it had to be an older Kohler. And that I would look into it, and he was going to try to do that this morning. But going back to the toolbox, so I thought it would make a great video on Claude and I rearranging my tools and my workstation. And there were two big reasons for it. One was, it was, towering Pisa sitting between where we are and our customers. So they're trying to look around the toolbox to visit with you. That was the one big reason. And the other is I have some other tools up here at the house and in my garage that I tend to use. And I didn't have room in my toolbox for them there at the shop. So, and I didn't have, at the shop, I didn't have a workbench to lay stuff out on. My son had given me that rolling cabinet that you see in the videos a lot, because he said it was taking up space in his garage. Well, I know if we wanted it, and I said, well, bring it over, you never know. I said, we'll make it into firewood at the very least, because it's all wood. But 90% of the videos that I do, I use that now, because it's a flat surface, and I can pretty much work off from it. And the stool that I got from Harbor Freight, now I can sit down instead of standing on my feet on concrete all day. I can sit down on the stool and still be above high level, so I can work on stuff, which makes it easier for me. And one way to free up some of my toolbox was to take some of these cases of tools like the snap ring pliers. I've got your standard set, which was in my bottom box. And then I had the specialty ones that were super long. They were made to go in on a 4 dually, snap ring to get it out to work on the hubs and stuff. So I had that set. But how often am I going to use that set? The big ones? Whenever my 4 dually needs work on the front end. That's it. Way too big for anything that I ever use on a small engine. But it's one of those things that I needed to have it, so I ordered it, got it, used it, and it paid for itself. So now it's just going to pick up dust on the shelves. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to take just simple labels and put what they are, so that you can line the cases up and just be able to look, okay, that's that one. Because, like I was explaining to Claude, the stuff that I'm putting out there is community stuff. And if he needs the snap ring pliers, the extended ones, or he wants to try the new compression tester, or he wants to try, it doesn't matter. Told him, I said, it's right there. Grab it, use it, and then put it back, when you're done with it. So that freed up a lot in the toolbox. And that will allow me to bring some of my other tools that I have out here in the garage, some of the specialty tools, down to the shop where I can use them to work on stuff. So, what I'm trying to get at is we've talked about buying tools, okay? And we've explained that you don't need top of the line. And if you're just getting into it, I would never, ever, ever, ever suggest start out with top of the line. If you're like my son and you work in a Ford garage and you need certain tools, specialty tools, and this and that, you're kind of stuck. You got to get them, right? And they're expensive, and you will take care of them because they are expensive. But like here at the shop, I supply everything. We don't have. I mean, it's night and day between an auto mechanic and a small engine repair mechanic. An auto mechanic needs so many more specialty tools, from the computer to the software. I'm not saying we're not going to get there with as the newer stuff comes out every year, but we're not there yet. We're not there at the point of where you need to have a laptop with a software program to diagnose a simple riding lawnmower, snowblower, or similar things. Not saying it's not coming, it's not here yet to speak of. Now, if you start looking into your compacts, if you work on compact tractors like we do, it is there. You do have to have software. I mean, we worked on the John Deere and the Kubota compacts, the ones that are within the last 15 years, and they do have a computer on board. And that's where it can start getting expensive. That's why a lot of dealerships will only sell one brand, because of the cost of just the equipment you need to do diagnostic repairs on those pieces of equipment. And if you're carrying like 3 different brands, John Deere, Kubota, Mahindra, all right, you got to have 3 different software programs running in order to work on those 3 different models as they come in. But I can't stress it enough. If you're just getting into it and you're just playing around with it, I would suggest just get your basics. Get yourself a set of screwdrivers. I would say 3/8 and 1/4 inch drive sockets and wrenches. And I would give them the little kits that have the extension right at Harbor Freight. I paid under $20 for the 1/4 inch metric. You're going to find that with the small engine stuff, a lot of the stuff you're going to find is metric. You're probably going to use your metric set more than you are your SAE, which is your standard US set. Because most of the stuff I encounter on carburetors and tearing stuff down always comes around to the 10 millimeter metric. It's one of the most common sockets and wrenches that I use in the shop when I'm working on stuff. And the other is the Torx 27. And that is used a lot on the cases, on the actual outer to take things apart. So those are the 2 things that you really need to have. You need a Torx 27 and you need a good 10 millimeter socket and end wrench is what I would recommend. Again, don't need to be top of the line. If you have time and you're hitting garage sales this summer, keep your eyes out for it. Tools. If you're going to auctions, don't get crazy, because I've seen guys get wrapped up in auctions and pay more than it's worth. Like you guys were saying, pawn shops, hand-me-downs, what have you. You don't need a boatload of tools to get into this. So what I want to stress the most is, in your workshop, you set it up the way it works for you. If you can't afford, or you don't have a rolling tool cabinet yet, you will. But right now, the money's not there to be able to buy that, so you can work on stuff. You may have a wooden bench made out of, 2x, because you want something sturdy. and you have all your tools laid out on the bench and maybe on the wall. You've got, your end wrenches and that. Perfect. If that works for you, that's the way you should be doing it. And there is something to be said, like James was saying, about having organized chaos. If you try to organize and get everything the way it looks nice, but you're spending more time trying to find what you need, it's kind of futile, right? It wasn't worth the effort. But building a solid work area, a bench, so that you can tear stuff apart on, and you can do that in a little outbuilding. You don't need a very big building. And there's no reason that you need a big shop if it's just a one-man band. You're doing it on the side. You're a do-it-yourselfer. Find yourself a little area where you can build a bench, something, you can buy the tables, like rolls in them, but they don't hold up to the weight when you start setting an engine on it or a lawnmower. Because the one thing you're going to probably want to avoid is bending over and down on your knees a lot when you're working on stuff. So if you can elevate that up to where it's comfortable to work on, especially as you get older, is a plus. But I can't stress enough, how you have your tools, where you have your tools, is more important than trying to impress anybody. Because in this business, I don't see where trying to impress someone is going to amount to tiddly squat, all right? And as Bob said, he's known guys that had $50,000 in tools, but didn't have a lot of skill and didn't have a good work ethic. Now, I talked about the guys, when I worked as an underground miner for 19 years, one of the things that I had to do was mechanical skills. And why is that? Because most mines are set up, I was a driller, I was top of the top, and I couldn't get any bigger unless I wanted to go into, foreman, but I had no interest. I was happy being a driller. And actually I made more money as a driller than I would have, because they did offer me supervisorial spots. I turned them down. But the way the mines was set up was, if you were a driller, it was your responsibility, your headings. You had more than one heading, and that was just an area you go in, and you drill up around, get it loaded, and fired at the end of the day. And we were after zinc and lead, okay? And if something broke down, then you always were at the mercy of what we call the 2,500 level, which is 2,500 feet under the ground, is the main hub and the main shop area where everything returns at night at the end of your shift, like your loaders, so you can high pressure wash them. And the operators were responsible for quite a bit of stuff, like checking the fluids, making sure the radiator was clean every shift, so on. But on 2,500, you wouldn't know you were underground. It was so lit right up. And the ceilings were like 40 foot, 50 foot high. And the shop was probably 100 foot across by 200 foot, with a concrete floor. And you had your mechanics stationed around it, and then you had your specialty tools, like your hose making for hydraulic hose. You had welders set up in another little area, what have you. But what happened is, when I was drilling and stuff, if I blew a hose, I was at the mercy of the 2,500 shop. and hoping that I could get a mechanic to come down and take the hose off, run it back up, fix the hose, and then bring it back down to me. Now, they had 6 mechanics in that shop. 6 of them. And that's what I said, I think yesterday or the day before, with Claude and I. You can tell a mechanic from a mechanic, all right? 2,500 shop, they all were skilled mechanics, don't get me wrong. But there was only 1 or 2 of them that were willing to go out and get dirty. And what do you mean by that? I mean, those guys that were in 2,500 shop, out of the 6 of them, 4 of them would go up at the end of the shift and not even have a speck of dirt on them. Nothing. Whereas the other 2, Terry and is it Doug? I mean, they'd be saturated with hydraulic fluid, and where they laid in the dirt, working on stuff out in the headings and stuff. Who do you think were the mechanics, the true mechanics? They weren't the ones, the 4 of them that were in the shop. But those 4 could tell you how to fix something. Those 4 could tell you how to organize your toolbox. And those 4 always had a spiffy clean workstation. But at the end of the day, were they actually, what's the right way to put it, worth their weight in gold? Not to us guys that were out in the mines working. We relied on 2 guys, all right? And the other 4, like if something needed to be worked on, like on a underground loader, they would expect that the operator have that spotless clean and have everything. And a lot of times the supervisors would throw the operator over with the mechanics to work together. And what would end up happening is the mechanics would use the operators as, to do the work while they stood there and watched. They never impressed me. Well, they knew how to be a mechanic. They had beautiful tools, a lot of them top of the line S&K. Whereas Doug, his were all craftsmen. And I couldn't remember. Oh, shoot. I think his was kind of a hodgepodge of everything. A little short guy. But he and Barry's workstation were never spotless in 2,500 shop because they were being run ragged, running back and forth between the shop and the headings, trying to get the tools that they thought they needed to fix what was going on down there and drive all the way out into the headings where it was technically unsafe. See, that's just it. The 2,500 shop was no different than being a shop above ground. You didn't have to worry about, some of the hanging, letting loose and dropping. None of that. But if you were out in a heading where a driller was or a loader operator stuff, yes, you did. I mean, you had to constantly be looking over your head for loose, rocks and stuff that you take a scaling bar and scale. And I remember some headings that were, we called it dike. It was a black rock. And once it got exposed to the air, you could hear it pop and snap, and it would throw pieces right at you. But you could scale a whole heading, 100 foot, a couple guys, in a couple hours. And by the time they got to the far end, it was just as bad, back where they started. So a lot of that we screened and pinned. And screened and pinned is you take and you have a pneumatic, it's called a jack leg, and you take screen and you put it into the rod and you drive it right up in so that it's supporting everything into the hanging, and it's going like 5 foot into the hanging to support it. So I'm getting off on a tangent, but the main theme today is I want you to walk away with is don't let anybody tell you how to organize your tools. Don't let anybody, tell you that this is the right way and this is the wrong way. If it's working for you, that's the key. I don't want anyone to feel minimized on this channel. Come on, shout. Feel minimized on this channel because they don't have the right toolbox or the tools in the right boxes none of that matters. None of it. And I can remember one mechanic that we brought in and we thought it would turn out good because he had his own tools and he'd gone to a couple of the schools already, I think Briggs and Kohler, so we figured, he'd be one we could leave alone and get stuff done. But what we ended up with is someone that had a lot of nice tools, never got dirty, constantly telling everybody else in the shop how to do stuff, but never doing it themselves. And they spent more time polishing tools and leaning on a toolbox than he did in the shop. And I let him go because I got tired of his attitude of, you guys are doing everything wrong. And when you come into a new shop, you might want to keep your head down and listen to the old mechanics that are there. But there is an exception, okay? And the exception is if you go to work for a certain shop and their expectation is everything is going to be clean and spotless, then that employer is more interested in looks than getting work out the door. And you're probably going to be running. See, Claude couldn't work for somebody like that, where they wanted you to spend more time making sure everything was nice and neat versus getting stuff out the door to pay the bills. In my shop, we need to get stuff in and out as quickly as possible so that we get paid. And if Claude having tools in 3 different work areas works for him, works for me. And he does make sense as far as, having to carry the tools back, clean them up, and take them back over there. You're wasting a lot of time. But all depends on what the owner thinks and feels that you should be as a mechanic in their shop. In my shop, I'm more concerned about doing quality work, time, and getting it out the door. Those 3 things. And safety is number 1. But what I'm trying to get across is I know a lot of you guys are just starting into this business, looking at retirees and stuff, and just starting it out on weekends, playing with it, or even working on your own stuff. I want you to learn the basics of how to approach things. But in the end, as long as we come to the same outcome and it works for you, touche. All right, so I'm going to start wrapping this up. Now, when I was talking about the underground mechanics and stuff, what it ended up happening was that's where I did a lot of work myself mine superintendent is who I reported to, not the supervisors. Mine superintendent. And I went to him and I said, look, I'm sitting here with my thumb up my ass waiting for a mechanic. Can we work on our own equipment? And his response was, if you're willing to work on your own mechanic, we will supply the tools. And I think there were like 7 or 8 of us that were drillers, and we all said yes. if you can get us the tools, we can do a lot of the mechanical stuff ourselves. And that'll free up some of the space and time on the poor two guys that were being mechanics. And we learned, we had, they would take us 7 drillers up and show us how to make hoses on the hose machine. As like the mine superintendent would take a day and have us just take a day off and run through the shop on how to use each one of the different things. And that made it quicker. We got more production, and it freed up the two guys that were busting their ass as mechanics. All right, so let me add also, which I highly recommend, if you have a concrete floor that you're working on, get yourself some rubber mats that you can, if you're going to be on your feet, one way to kill your back, especially as you get older, is standing on concrete. And at the shop, we have the type that you can buy the interlock, and they're foam. And Claude, we had a bunch of extra. We bought it at an auction somewhere, but we have it where our computers are, and then Claude's got 8 or 10 of them out in the shop that he takes and he throws them down onto the ground to lay on them. Or if he's working on something where he's on his feet, he's got one of those underneath his feet. And they're not that expensive, but you need something to cushion between you and that concrete floor if you're going to be on it for lengths of time. I hope this video kind of cleared up with a lot of you guys that you don't need top of the line. You don't need to do things because somebody else tells you how to do it. All right, if it works for you, it works for you. And you're going to find that some of the specialty tools that some of you have been talking about, we don't use. And I can give you one example, is like on the chainsaws. I sold a tool that you threaded right into the spark plug hole. It was steel. And you brought the piston up against it. And that's how you took the clutch system apart. And Claude didn't like the idea of metal up against metal, even though that tool is made specially for that. The way he learned to do it and kept doing it was he would simply just take some rope and get the piston down at the low end and then put as much rope as he could and then bring the piston up against the rope instead of up against the metal surface. It's about that big around. And he said that the chances of damage occurring is less likely his way than it is the other way. And we'll show you these things that Claude has found ways that he feels more comfortable and that I've felt more comfortable. On that note, you guys have a great Thursday, and we'll see you here bright and early tomorrow morning. Alrighty.